I am extremely bullish on the future of Louisiana. I am optimistic because of the foundation for success that we've laid over the last few years, but particularly last year when we were able to stabilize our budget for the long term, thanks to a bipartisan compromise plan that we passed last summer, and we turned deficits into surplus. And at the same time, we've been able to provide the people of Louisiana a net tax reduction from last year to this year of right at $600 million. In 2018, we reached the lowest unemployment rate we've seen in a decade, and Louisiana's employment currently is at a near record high with well over 2 million individuals employed in our state. Since the beginning of 2016, we've attracted 113 major economic development projects. These projects are producing $30.7 billion worth of new capital investment in Louisiana, and collectively they're resulting in 27,500 new jobs while retaining more than 19,000 existing jobs across the state of Louisiana. According to the latest report from the Federal Bureau of Economic Analysis, Louisiana's economy grew at a rate of 4.3% in the second quarter of 2018. It outpaced the national average and 12 other states in the southeastern region of our country. In fact, the economy measured by GDP is at an all-time high in Louisiana, currently at $250 billion. Our economy has never been stronger, bigger, more robust than it is right now. Additionally, because of work that we've done, the percentage of people in the in the state of Louisiana who are uninsured has been cut in half since I became governor, down from almost 1 in 4 to right at 1 in 10 because of the Medicaid expansion. The number of people incarcerated has been reduced, and we are no longer the nation's #1 incarcerator. And that's the first time in decades a governor of our state's been able to say that. And we're not only saving money, we're promoting public safety in what we are doing. And we are reinvesting those savings into critical programs to reduce recidivism by promoting education and training, but also mental health and substance abuse treatment. At the same time, higher education has been funded without a reduction for the second time in a row and for only the second time in 10 years. We fully met our obligations to all of our students on TOPS, and need-based aid for higher education through the GO Grant program is being funded currently at the highest amount ever. So these are the types of things that I believe have positioned us for even greater success as we move forward. And I want to discuss some of the goals for this year. As you probably know, I've already announced that my #1 priority for this legislative session is to take the first step in a multi-year plan for investing in our K-12 schools, teachers, and school personnel. What really is an investment in our children. The most precious natural resource that God has entrusted to us are our children, and there's nothing more important than their education to set them up for success, as well as the success for the state of Louisiana collectively. Just the other day, it was reported that Louisianans are quitting their jobs at a record high rate, that this is having a negative impact on students who are choosing to enter the teaching profession. Louisiana has actually reported teacher shortages for every year since 2004. We know that fewer individuals are completing teacher preparation, and 35% of the students in school today are being taught by teachers who are either not certified or they're teaching outside their area of certification. Furthermore, real funding for K-12 education has actually declined across the nation and in Louisiana. I believe pay increases will help recruit talented teachers and make Louisiana more competitive relative to other SREB states and improve educational outcomes in Louisiana. Because the #1 ingredient to quality education is to have a highly professional, motivated teacher in every single classroom with our children. It is also important to me that we value the efforts of all the other individuals involved in educating those children, whether they work in the school building as a cafeteria worker, a paraprofessional, a custodian, a secretary, or whether they drive those kids to and from school on those buses. So as such, I will be moving to raise teacher pay by $1,000 next year and school support personnel by $500. But my plan to invest in K through 12 doesn't end there. It's also important that we increase funding in the classroom. You know, according to a 2018 study by the U.S. Department of Education, 94% of teachers spend their own money on school supplies without reimbursement due to a lack of sufficient funding in the classroom. And I can tell you, being married to a public school elementary music teacher, I watched Donna every single year buy things like instruments, for example, for the kids that she was teaching. So I will also support a 1.375% increase in the MFP, our funding formula for K through 12 education, to provide for a greater investment in school supplies, books, smart boards, and cutting-edge technology to prepare our youth for the workforce of tomorrow. You should also know that I will once again advocate for a modest but meaningful increase to the minimum wage. You know, I say it year after year, but every year the case becomes even more compelling. $7.25 per hour is not a meaningful living wage in 2019. And as we started this year, 21 other states and the District of Columbia actually gave their workers receiving minimum wage a raise. The minimum wage in those states actually increased with the start of the year. Yet Louisiana remains one of only 5 states without a state minimum wage. And the last time the federal minimum wage was increased was actually in 2009. So Congress has made it clear that it's out of the business of raising the minimum wage, and they are relying upon states to tackle this, and that's what we should do. Many states are acting. It is past time for Louisiana to join them. So I'll be advancing legislation to establish a state minimum wage at $8 per hour on January the 1st, 2020, and $8.50 per hour beginning on January 1st, 2021. And I want you to know this legislation was modeled after our neighbor in Arkansas. Since then, Arkansas has actually passed another increase to the minimum wage. And by the way, on every single iteration of their experience with increasing the minimum wage, employment has actually gone up in Arkansas, not down. Another issue I'm going to continue to advocate for is equal pay for equal work. Louisiana has the highest wage gap by gender in the United States. That ought to offend everybody. We know that white women earn 70 cents on the dollar, women of color about 47 cents on the dollar. We've got to do better than that. My continued goal in advancing equal pay legislation is to rid the state of its status of having the largest gender wage inequity in the country, to make sure that we are paying people what they are worth, and that we don't unnecessarily trap children in poverty because we're not paying their parents what they should be paid. And we know that we have a lot of single women, especially in the state of Louisiana, who are raising children. So I'll be advancing legislation to eliminate pay secrecy by prohibiting employers from taking action against employees for inquiring about, discussing, or disclosing their wages or another employee's wages. I'm also committed to ensuring that every applicant for health insurance will be able to access coverage no matter their health status. Now, we know from the conversation all across the country and over the last several years that support for the protection for those individuals with pre-existing conditions nearly universal. We know that nearly 850,000 Louisianans actually have a pre-existing condition. But those individuals are at risk of losing critical protections if a reckless lawsuit that has been joined in by Attorney General Jeff Landry were to ultimately succeed in federal court. So we want to take action here in Louisiana to afford protections to the people here and basically preserve the status quo in terms of the protections of individuals with pre-existing conditions. Louisianans deserve to know that their health care is protected, and I look forward to working with the legislature to accomplish this goal. And in the coming weeks and months, we'll be detailing even more initiatives to include strengthening safety measures at K through 12 schools, fighting against opioid addiction, reducing red tape for Louisiana businesses and professionals, spurring economic growth in low-income communities, and promoting veteran-owned businesses. And this last goal is one that I know you all share with me, and that is in 2019, it is my intention not to have a single special session of the legislature. That should be doable. With our budget woes finally in the rearview mirror, there is nothing stopping us from making meaningful changes this year that will continue to improve the lives of all who call the great state of Louisiana home. As I mentioned before, I'm excited. I'm ready. I'm confident that this is going to be one of our best years ever. All we have to do is put Louisiana first. Now, before I take questions, I do want to mention a very tragic accident that happened just the other day, and ask everyone to pause and reflect on that tragedy that has particularly affected the community in Marksville, which is the home to 5 children who were killed in a car wreck on Friday. Certainly our hearts go out to those families. We have been in contact with that church community, and we know that Pastor Descamp actually lost a grandchild in that accident. We know that his wife was injured and is still in the hospital in Florida, I believe. So I hope that everyone will continue to join me and Don in praying for these families and that community that has lost so much. We've been in touch with the church leaders over the weekend, and they know that there is a financial burden coming for those families. And I did want to report that a fund has been established by the Louisiana District of the United Pentecostal Church with money going to the church community in Marksville if you have the ability to donate and help these families. And my office will be sharing the link to this fund with the members of the press and the public. You know, one of the things I've always been inspired by is the generosity and goodness of the people of Louisiana to respond to their neighbors when they are in need, and I'm just asking that that happen again now for these folks up in Marksville, that we lift up our brothers and sisters in their time of need.